I'm sure you have seen a gas station or two that are closed up in your area and always wonder, why did someone close it? Or if you should buy it and open it up, and if you do, would it do great business for you? Listen and find out as I answer 6 burning questions from our listeners in this episode.
Welcome to the one and only Gas Station Business 101 podcast, where you can learn all the secrets about how to start and operate a gas station business successfully and make money. This podcast is brought to you by the good folks at CSB Academy Publishing Company. And now, here is your host, Shabbir Hossain.
Welcome to Gas Station Business 101 podcast. I'm your host, Shabbir Hossain, and this is episode number 58. This is the show where we discuss how to start, run, and grow a gas station business successfully. And I give you an inside look at many real-life case studies so you can follow and become successful in this business. First, before we start, I need to apologize for not coming up with an episode any sooner. I was a little under the weather at first, then got busy with few projects and had to put the blog and the podcast on the back burner, but just for a bit. Well, we all have to make money to survive, right? And I was doing just that and got busy with it. But I'm back, and hopefully I won't take much breaks anymore and produce more episodes. Even though I told you at the last episode that the next one will be all about the updated P&L about the store that I helped some investors buy in 2015, at the end of 2015. If you recall, I've done 2 episodes on that specific store, and I've shared some P&Ls and income reports to show how that business has grown. Now that it has been over a year, I have gathered up some more P&Ls on that store, and I'm working on those so I can share those with you so you can see what that business is doing now. So hopefully next episode will be the one where I would get to share those information with you. As I said, I've been busy, so I didn't even get a chance to answer some of your emails yet. And if I haven't, my sincere apology. But what I did is I went through some of the emails, and I know I didn't get to see all of them, but I picked out 6 questions that people, our listeners, our readers, sent us through Facebook and via email. And I looked through those and I realized instead of sending out the replies via email or via Facebook, I should really share those answers with everybody so everybody can get benefited from these questions, because these are the questions that are vital to our business, and I'm sure every one of you would want to know the answers to that. So without further ado, let's get started. And this is the 3rd Q&A episode. As I said, I've done 2 other Q&A before. I haven't done one recently, and I know there are a lot more questions inside my inbox that I need to dig up and do a couple of more of these episodes where everybody gets to listen and understand and most likely relate at times as far as what problems people face in this business and how to remedy those problems. So in this 3rd Q&A episode, I answer 6 questions, because if I answer any more, the episode gets longer and longer, and I rather not take your valuable time. Instead, we can break it down and keep it in a more manageable fashion. So the first question, and for obvious reasons, I will not mention names where these questions are coming from, because some of these questions relate to people that are looking to buy gas stations and they're facing some issues. And by mentioning their name, I may jeopardize their potential buying of that property or business. So just for the safety purpose, I will keep the names away from the episodes. So let's start. The first one comes from an individual that says, I'm looking to buy a closed up gas station with property. What do I need to worry about in this process? Well, at the beginning of this episode, as you heard, I said that all of us time to time see stores that are closed up. And I'm sure if you're like me, you too wonder, what if you could buy that store and get it started? And if you do, how well would that business do for you? And I have seen many of these stores over the years, and there are times I've checked into a few and I have bought at least 2 of those and got them started. And most times, well, if you've done the research, they end up doing well. And the 2 stores that I have bought over the years, well, they cost a lot of money to get things back up and running. But once we did that, the stores did do well. And once I sold them, we made a little bit of money as well. So it's not always bad. Just because a store is closed up doesn't mean that it didn't do very well. There are various reasons that a store can be closed. For example, if you are in Florida and if you drive around, you will see a lot of stores that are closed. Why? Mostly because state of Florida passed a law a few years ago where it says anybody that owns a gas station has to upgrade their underground storage tank by the year, I forget, that was 2008 or 9 or 10. They gave people about 6 or 7 years time, but they said every gas station tanks has to be upgraded to the double fiberglass tanks, and it cost quite a bit of money to upgrade tanks. So let's say if you have a marginal store that barely made any profit or made a little bit of profit, you could not justify spending $150,000 or $200,000 upgrading your tanks because that's a lot of money. And a lot of these small business owners could not get a business loan because either they had bad credit or didn't have enough credit or didn't have enough down payment, didn't have good tax return, whatever the reason was. So what they ended up doing is closing the store. And there are a lot of big corporations that owns hundreds of stores. When this law came about, if they had any marginal stores, they did not spend the money. They just closed up the store and said, well, we will sell the property just as the property, not as a gas station. And whoever would buy that place or that property rather, they can do other businesses but not use it as a gas station unless they upgrade the tanks. So once some of these stores got closed up, other people came in and bought the store, and some of them converted the store to other businesses like pawn shops, fast food. And some people went ahead and spent the money, upgraded the tanks, and opened up the business. And some of them are doing well, and again, some of them are not. Like anything else, there are good and there are bad. But if you see this in your area, it could be that there was a law such as that affected that business to close it up. Or it could be that the company went belly up, they went bankrupt, and they had to close up their stores. They couldn't find any buyers. Or that the business did not do well, and that could be because of bad management, quite a bit of theft. It could be hundreds of different reasons. And one of the reasons could be that there was a shift in population, in demographics, or it could be that the roads in front of that store has changed somehow. The Department of Transportation, DOT, most likely rerouted the traffic through another road, or there was a bridge that is no longer a bridge there because a hurricane or some other natural disaster broke that bridge down, and now people are traveling on another road. So it could be a lot of different reasons. And if you live in that area, you should know that much, that if that was the reason that the store closed up because of rerouting of traffic. Now, let's say none of these reasons are valid for a store that you're looking at. Then there are 5 things you need to find out before you can think of buying that store, or even consider to buy that store. What are those 5 things that you need to find out? Well, first would be how long is this store been closed? That's a very vital information. Let's say the store has been closed up for 10 years. That's quite a long time, because in 10 years' time, a lot of things can go bad, a lot of things can deteriorate, and then you may end up spending more money to get that store opened up than if you would have built a store, for example. Let's say in 10 years, the tanks got corroded because, let's say, if the premises doesn't have any power, electricity, then the cathodic protection system, every gas station has a electronic system installed with the tank that's called cathodic protection. It's a leak protection system. And if you do not have electricity, and let's say over the years, the tank's opening means where the opening of the tank is, wherever they usually pour the gasoline to the tank, there is a gasket that sits around the top of it. Let's say those gaskets got weathered out, water got into it, and if it's a metal tank, it started getting rusted, and then finally it started leaking. Now, if you buy a property such as that, it will end up costing you a lot more money than if you bought a ground without a tank and put tanks in it. Because in this case, you have to dig up the ground, dispose the old tanks, and it's not very easy to dispose a tank that is bad and leaking. You have to get your environmental department involved, and they have to inspect, they have to make sure the ground is not contaminated, because if it is, then there is some cleanup process that needs to take place. So it's a very lengthy process, a very expensive process, and it can drain you before you even know it. Next question you need to find out is, why was it closed? I'm sure if you ask around and if you ask other people in the area or vendors, if you have contact with vendors in that area, let's say you already own a store in that city, you can ask vendors, hey, why was that store closed? When did it close? How did it close? Why did it close? A lot of these people will tell you the reasons. So listen carefully and pretty much make a mental note. Why do you think the store was closed? And not everybody will know the real reason, but if you ask enough people, you can draw your own conclusion after asking, let's say, 10 different people. You will know the reason. Next, you need to find out what are the conditions of the tanks, pumps, the store itself, including the electrical, the plumbing, and the roof. Now, for this step, you need to contact the seller. And let's say you see the store is closed down. There has to be a sign in front of it that says for lease or for sale for you to find this information. If there is no sign, that means it is not for sale. Then you can wonder as much as you want, but it's not going to do you any good. So if it is for sale, at this point, after you find out how long it has been closed for and why it was closed, and if you're satisfied with those answers, then the third step would be to contact this seller and find out about the other stuff. Like I said, the conditions of the tank, the pumps, the store itself. When I say the store itself, I mean the structure of the building, the coolers, walk-in coolers inside, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, the windows, and all of those things. And for this process to take place and for this due diligence to happen properly, you have to spend a little bit of money. You need to most likely call a company that works on pumps and registers and installs tanks and whatnot. And you need to get one of these companies, a maintenance company, to come in and check out the tanks, the pumps, the register system if they have one. If not, at least the company will test the line and tell you that it looks good, and all you have to do is get a load of fuel and install a register system and it should be working. Or they can say, we did a tank tightness test and the tanks are bad, the pumps are bad, and whatever and whatnot. So those are important. And once that happens, you can get either a general contractor, or you can just call an electrician, a plumber separately and have them inspect both of these, and then get somebody like a general contractor that has idea about the structure and let them take a look at the roof other stuff in the buildings, the cooler, or you can call somebody that repairs air conditioners and walk-in coolers and have them check out all the cooling units of the store, from AC to coolers to ice makers and all of those stuffs. And if they check out okay, or if I'm sure you will find some problems. It's not going to be like everything is working properly. Only way that will happen is if the store was closed just 2 weeks ago or a month ago or something like that. If not, there will be some hiccups, some problems. But as long as they're manageable, you shouldn't be discouraged and you should be moving forward with it. Then the next step would be also see if there are any changes in the demographics in and around the store. And you can do this step before you call the seller. So I should have said this before, but you can also see if there is a population shift. 10 years ago, there were, let's say, 30,000 people living in this area, and now there are only 10,000 or 5,000 people because the area has gotten bad and there are a lot of break-ins, there are a lot of this, there are a lot of that, and people moved away from their area. It happens in every city, population shift. People move from one area to other. And if that's the case in this store, you need to find that out ahead of time and keep that as a main factor in your decision-making process. And the last one that you need to check into is if there are any other new stores in that area that you will be competing against. Let's say the store closed 5 years ago. How many stores were there when this store closed up? Let's say there were 3 stores in 1.5 or 2 square miles. Now there are 4 stores. So that means you have more people that you will be competing against. So now that would be a big factor, because if everything checks out perfect in that store, you still have more competitors than what it had before it closed. So you need to take that into account and figure out, will you be able to stand out among that crowd and be successful, be profitable? So that is one calculation you have to do. And for you to know that for sure, there has to be something that is working for you, meaning that your location is much better than the other locations because yours is right after the traffic light. It's very easy to get in and out, and you're pretty much the first stop when people coming from town or something similar to that. Now, if your store is the third one when people are coming from town or going to town, then they're passing 2 other stores to come to yours. But if yours is the first one, then obviously you have a better competitive advantage. So these are the things you need to look at and figure out if this is something doable for you. So before you jump too high, these are the steps you need to take to find out if this is a good store for you or not. Hopefully, I was able to answer your question. Next, number 2, in one of the podcasts, you had mentioned that one of the reasons someone could sell their gas station is because some competitor is crushing them on fuel prices. Now, how can we figure out if this is the reason why a seller is selling his or her gas station? That is the question I received via email. Now, what this person is asking is, I mentioned in one of the episodes that there are competitors. I think I spoke about this in the fuel pricing episode, that there are large players in fuel business that comes into an area and lowball price such a way that you can't even compete with them because they would sell below your cost. Let's say your cost today is $2 a gallon. If somebody within walking distance from your store starts selling fuel at $1.95 a gallon, can you compete with that? I don't think so, because you're buying it at $2 a gallon. Then you have to add your credit card fees on top of that, which is around 3 to 4 cents a gallon. So your minimum price should be at $2.05, where you will not be making much of money at all, maybe a penny if you're lucky. And somebody else is selling it at $1.95. So if you go match that competitor, you'll be losing 10 cents a gallon. And before you know it, your bank account will be drained out and you'll be out of business. So this person is asking that if there is a gas station that's for sale, how can the buyer find out that if that is the reason they're selling it, because somebody else is crushing their business? Well, there are ways to find this out. And one way would be if you can get the fuel pricing every day in your area. Let's say you're already in business, then you already know what the prices are in that area. Let's say you're not in business yet. Then do you know somebody who's in business? If that's the case, ask them to show you fuel prices for the daily fuel prices that they receive in their store or through their email or whichever way. This way, you can drive around and see around that store how many competitors there are and who's the price leader. And it's very easy to find out who's the price leader because they will sell a lot of gas, first of all. Second, they will post the cheapest price. And most likely we'll see it is a big branded store or unbranded, but it is a big, nice looking store. And most likely it's a corporate owned store or some individual that owns many other stores. Usually the reason I'm saying that because the people that become the price leader are typically bigger companies with deeper pockets. If you own just one store, it's very hard for you to compete and lowball prices where you're not making any money, but you're gaining a lot of market share. But that market share is not paying your bills because you're going under. So typically these are bigger corporations and or individuals with many stores. So once you identify that price leader, look at their price versus what the cost is. And look at the store that you're looking to buy and see what their prices are. You can figure out if you watch it for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, that if the store you're looking to buy is making any money on fuel or they're just trying to catch up to that other big brand store or big store that is the price leader in that area. If that is the case, then that should be a red flag to tell you that this guy is trying to match the other guy, but since he can't exactly match it, he's getting close to it, but at the same token, he's losing his shirt by trying to compete because he doesn't have any fuel profit margin. So first thing is you need to find out if you can get access to the fuel prices, the daily fuel prices that we pay as a retailer to buy fuel at a wholesale price. Once you have that, then you know how much your competitors are selling versus the store you're looking at, how much they're selling it for. But first, you need to make sure you identify who's the price leader in that area. There may be more than one, but at least once you identify them, watch their prices versus the store you're looking at, their prices, and compare and see how they're faring up against each other and how much money they're making. And that will give you the answer. Number 3, let me read the question first. I am buying a gas station, but the seller wants to sell the tanks, canopy, and pumps for $1. What I want to know is if I leave the business at the end of the lease term due to not finding any buyer, then what should I do if it is in my name? What if the landlord doesn't want to buy it for $1 like I did? Well, I think it needs some clarification first for everybody else to understand. What this gentleman is talking about is there are deals that you will find where the land is owned by, let's say, a third party. It's called a ground lease. Let's say there is a corner location, a ground that is very lucrative to have a gas station, and somebody approaches that landowner, says, hey, can you sell this land to me so I can build a gas station? The owner says, no, I don't want to sell my land, but I can lease it to you. It's called a ground lease. And you can build your store, and I'll give you long-term lease, 20, 30 years. All you do is pay me monthly lease fee to have your gas station on top of my property. And sometimes the locations are so lucrative that some of these people, business owners, do agree to lease that property and build a gas station. In my opinion, it's not a good idea. And I'm not talking about this person that's asking me the question. I'm talking about the person who built that store. because you never want to build a $1 million store on somebody else's property that you don't own. Because always remember, lease has a lot of languages that can turn against you very quickly. Let's say if it is not a very honest type person that owns the land, he can or she can find a way to show that you're violating some terms of the lease over the years, and at one point can get you out of that lease, and they will end up owning that $1 million gas station without paying a penny. So it is, in my opinion, a very, very bad idea. The other reason it's a bad idea is when you try to build a store, let's say it costs almost $1 million to build a store nowadays, and when you go to the bank to borrow money, and bank sees that you're building it on a leased property, then they would ask for a lot of security to back up that loan. It could be your home, it could be your rental home, it could be other properties that you own that they would have to use as the security collateral to secure this loan because you don't own the land. So it is a tough thing to do all the way around. But in the event, like in this gentleman's case, he just found a store to lease, and that store happens to sit on a leased property that is leased from a third party individual or a company rather. Now, usually in this case, the person that's operating the store, who is the leasee in this case, usually when they get out of the business or they sell the business, let's say this store, they're selling the lease only. And they're selling, let's say they're asking $150,000 goodwill plus inventory. Now, this person also owns, like he said, the canopy, the tank, the pumps, and all that. Since this person cannot take them with him, what they usually do is they usually do a deal of dollar buyout. And this person is asking if he should do that. Well, I think he should. You should really buy it for $1 because at least if you don't, then this person that's leasing it to you will not hold any more rights because most likely he's not going to carry any insurance. He's not going to have any other ties to the business. So even if you don't buy it, let's say the pump breaks down. Who's going to fix it? You or him? He's out of business. He sold the business to you. So having him own the tank or the pump is not going to do you any good because most likely he is not a big company. So he will not have insurance on top of this. And anything goes wrong, you have to go through him. Let's say the tanks. You have to register and pay registration fee every year. In the event you don't buy it, what you have to do is every year find that person, say, hey, can you fill out this form and send it to the state so I can get my registration renewed? Things like that. I mean, it's not going to give you any more liability than what it already comes with. So when you're buying the place, make sure everything is in operating condition, the tanks are in good health, because that is the only thing I would check on. If the tanks are in good health and if there is no leakage, and if there are safety mechanism in place, some type of leak detection system. Once I know that the tanks, the pumps, and the canopies are in good health, I would buy it for $1. And obviously, for every business, you have to have insurance. So you know anything goes wrong, if the hurricane hits or the tornado comes, your insurance will cover that. Now, if you didn't own it, a third party owned it, then even insurance would become very cumbersome to handle because the insurance will say, you don't own this. So the claim has to be filed, the insurance has to be carried by somebody else. So in reality, to get all the red tape out of this business, you should really buy it for $1. Now, the question is, at the end of your lease term, if you don't want to operate the store anymore, what happens then, right? Well, if you know the business is a healthy business and that's the reason you're buying it, that means it is a money-making business. As long as you run it properly, it should still be a money-making business. And always remember, if you're seeing that business may go down in next 2-3 years, you need to sell it ahead of time. Don't wait till it dies, because then you will not get anything out of it. Instead, a business has a life cycle with every owner. So if you think you're at the end of the life cycle of that business, or you're just losing interest because you want to do something bigger, better. Find somebody, sell it to them, sell that lease for $1 as well, and be done with it. And also, let's say you did not find anybody, then what you need to do is at the end of lease term, the ground owner, if he buys it or he doesn't buy it, it sits on his property or her property. So all you have to do is turn the lease over to them and say it is all yours. And all the attachment comes with the property will end up being their property and not yours. Question number 4. I'm going to read the question first. Here we go. I have been meaning to tell you how much I enjoyed the gas station C-store development podcast you did. Thank you. One point I was not clear on was about reselling or leasing that property. Let's say I stabilized the business in 3 years and it does 120,000 gallons per month on fuel sales, 22,000 gallons of diesel sales, $75,000 on inside merchandise sales, and $90,000 in fast food sales. My question is, what should my resale value be after 3 years of operation? How much can I sell or lease the business for which will not include the real estate? And thirdly, how much can I sell the business with real estate? So it is a 3-part question. He wants to know how much the resale value would be in 3 years after 3 years of operation. And secondly, he wants to know how much can he lease the business for without real estate? And third, how much can he sell the business with real estate based on these sales figures? And he's talking about an episode I have done in a 3-part series recently in last few months where we talked about how to build a gas station from ground up. And I believe those episodes were around 51, 52, 53, around that episode series where I did a 3-part series on how to build a gas station from ground up. He's referring to that episode. And I apologize, maybe I wasn't clear enough as far as the resale value. I know I touched on it, but maybe I did not discuss it in length to clarify some of these confusions. So let me address these 3 questions. So hopefully all of the listeners, you understand what he's asking here, that he has built a store, hypothetically speaking, and he has good sales figures that I just mentioned. Now, if he wants to sell it, how much can he sell it for? So let's tackle the first question. But before I do that, let me also refer you back to one episode, which is episode number 3. Where I specifically talked about the valuation of a gas station, how to come up with a value for a gas station, either if when you're buying or when you're selling. So if any of you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly recommend you listen to episode number 3, which is how to come up with a valuation. Now, as far as building a gas station, as I mentioned in those episodes, that it costs certain amount of money to buy a land and then build a gas station. And depending on the size of the gas station, you can spend between $600,000-$700,000 to $3 million even, depending on where it is. If it's in New York City, yes, you'll spend quite a bit of money because the land is the land value in cities like New York or Chicago, Los Angeles are very high. And places in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in rural areas, the land value is not as high, but the construction is still pretty much the same. So you will end up spending quite a bit of money building a gas station, regardless where it is. Now, once you build a station, let's say the store started doing well, and in 3 years you reached a certain type of volume, like this person said, 120,000 gallons a month on fuel, 22,000 gallons on diesel, $75,000 worth of merchandise sales, and an incredible number, which is $90,000 in fast food sales. So this is a gold mine. to be honest. And how do you value this business? If you recall, or if you listen to episode 3, I talked about there are 2 ways to price a gas station. And when I'm talking about a gas station, I'm talking about a leased price on a gas station, not with real estate. Because real estate is completely a different ball game when the real estate is involved. But as far as leasing a gas station, usually there are 2 very common methods that people play with. One is 2 or 2.5 times, as high as 3 times their monthly sales of inside merchandise, not fuel. So let's say if the store is doing $100,000 in inside merchandise sales, 2.5 times would be $250,000. So the price can be as high as $300,000 if you go up to 3 times. And in this case, the deli should be considered as a inside merchandise sales because it is sold from inside the store and not fuel. So in this store, it is $165,000 sales because he said $75,000 inside merchandise and $90,000 of the fast food sales. If you add those 2 up, it comes to $165,000. So in this case, he can ask, let's say 2 or 2.5 times, which would be $165,000 times 2 or 2.5 or even 3. Now, it's going to be quite a bit of money if it is 3 times, because then a lot of people may say, well, instead of buying it for $385,000 or $400,000, I can just buy the whole thing if the person is selling it for 1.2 million or 1.3 million. And it would be easier for them to get a loan because they're buying it with the real estate. So there has to be a justifiable line where you can justify asking the price that you're asking. Because let's say you're asking $500,000 for the lease. Yes, it is a profitable business, but this business that you're asking $500,000 for, somebody has to come up with that money in a cash form because bank won't loan money on a leased property for a goodwill. Banks typically don't loan money for goodwill. So unless somebody is sitting on a lot of cash, your option to find a buyer would be very limited. So in this event, as I said, there are 2 methods to pricing a leased gas station. One is 2 to 2.5 times, as high as 3 times the sales of your inside merchandise, monthly inside merchandise sales. The other one is called multiple methods. It is similar to what I just said, but instead of sales figure, you take the business P&L and see at the end of the year how much the business has made. And if you have 3 years of their balance sheet and P&L, and if you verified all those numbers and it's done by a CPA, and you see, let's say the store or the owner or the corporation that owns the business is making or showing that they're making $100,000 a year after everything is said and done, after everybody got paid, the net income from that business was $100,000. I'm just picking out a random round figure number. Let's say $100,000 a year. Then you can typically ask 2 to 3 times that value, which again would be $250,000 to $300,000. So you see, whichever method you go with, the numbers are very close to the same. Either you go with your monthly inside sales volume and multiply that from 2 or 3 times, or you can take the net yearly income, multiply that with 2, 2.5, or 3 times. So that is the way you can figure out how much to lease that business for. As for selling it with real estate now, that is a different ballgame. As I said, in this case, you have to see after 3 years of operation, you will have your county tax office, your property tax office is going to show a value for that property. You need to find that value first. Let's say you build that store from ground up. So you have a tally, all the numbers that you spend building that store. Again, hypothetically speaking, let's say it cost you exactly $1 million to build that store. Now, when you go to your local county tax assessor's office, the property tax office, they usually show you a valuation every year, and that valuation usually goes up over time. So let's say after 3 years of operation, that value should typically be lower than what you think the value is, because that's how the property tax works. So let's say that value shows 650 or 700,000, but you spend $1 million building that store. Fine. As long as you know what the county assessor's office is telling you the value they think it is, you know your baseline. Not that I want you to sell it for 650,000, but at least you know the baseline. Then you know how much you spend. Now, these 3 years that you build the business, there is a value to your business. There is a business value, of course, on top of what you just built. So in the event that you, let's say, spend $1 million building that store, and now in 3 years you build that business up where you're generating $100,000 income a year. Now, use that same formula once again, which is the multiple method formula or the sales method formula, whichever is more comfortable for you to use. And then you can add your calculated value on top of your expense, the expense that you paid to build that store. So if I were you, I would say, okay, I spent $1 million building that store. And if I would have leased it to somebody the day one, which didn't have any business value, I would have leased it to him thinking that I spent $1 million, so the rent should be 1% of $1 million, so it's a $10,000 rent, and I would ask you for $50,000 security deposit, and here is the store. But now that I've ran it for 3 years and I built the business to where it is today, there is a business value for that store. So in this event, I would still ask for a rent similar to 1% of the total investment, which should be at least $10,000 or more. And then the asking price, if you're leasing it, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. The only reason I mentioned rent is if you're leasing it to somebody and you're asking for, let's say, $250,000 or $300,000 goodwill, then you should ask 1% of the investment as your rent. But if you're selling it to somebody, then you should add, let's say you started off with $1 million, and then your business value, if you use one of those two methods, one is the monthly sales volume method, the other one is multiple method, which is the net earning times 2.5 or 3 or 2, depending on how you want to do it, anywhere between 2 to 3 on both cases. So let's say that number comes to $300,000. Then you're asking $1.3 million for your store. Simple. Whatever money you spend to build that store, plus the business value of that store, because you're giving them a business that generates income. So it's an opportunity that they're buying along with the real estate. So in my opinion, I would ask 1.3, even as high as 1.4. If I know that it is a good location, there is not very many competitors, and there is more room to grow, and it is a very good income generating property, then yes, I would ask $1.4 million. And then somebody can negotiate me down to 1.35 or 1.3. And if I have other projects in mind that I need to get out of this one so I can jump into the other, I will sell it. But if I'm not in a hurry, I would hold my price firmly and say, this is my price, either you buy it or not. Because I'm making money, so I don't have to sell it today. Well, again, it depends on the situation, depends on individual, and depends on what other things you have to do. So if you're leasing the property to somebody else, yes, use one of those two methods to figure out what the value should be. But if the number gets too high, then provide them with the second option, which is, or you can buy the whole thing for this much money. And that way you'll find more buyers, because a lot more buyers can go to the bank and borrow that money and be able to pay you that $1.4 million. But if you're asking $500,000 just for the lease, then they have to come up with that fund from family, from whatever, but it has to be cash. Cash, when I say cash, not hard cash, but it has to be in somebody's bank account, because not very many banks will give you a business loan on goodwill value. That doesn't work that way. Unless you have other properties, you have other assets that you can secure the loan with. Then it becomes more like a personal loan. Okay, hopefully I was able to clear up that confusion. Moving on to number 5. Let me read the question. It is a funny one, but all of us that are in this business, we face this often. That's why I wanted to include this one so everybody can relate and get a laugh and understand how to deal with this type of issues. Okay, here it goes. First of all, thank you for your podcast and all the resources you share with us. It is great to learn from someone with all your experience. Keep it up. Now, the problem he mentions, the public restroom at my gas station is located outside, meaning people have to ask for a key at the counter to use it. Normally, we give the key to customers, people who actually buy from us, and people who we know, customers from the past who might not be buying anything on that day. But sometimes people get very angry when we don't give them the keys out if they're not buying anything. People who only stop at a station to use the restroom. That being said, the cashier is many times focused to give out the key to non-customers in order to avoid headaches. The problem is that people don't care about the restroom. They pee on the floor, misuse the toilet paper, soap, paper towels, and write graffiti on the walls. Some others use it to consume drugs or have other bad activities. The main problem is that once every week the toilet gets clogged, sometimes so badly that I have to actually replace the toilet 3-4 times a year. And it is impossible to unclog it. I've been trying to find the best solution for this. It is mandatory to have public restroom according to the Florida law, so I can't close it. I'm also forced to offer toilet paper, soap, paper towels, even if people misuse them, and it represents a high cost to my business. Some people have suggested installing a coin lock, so I charge something small to use the restroom. But I'm afraid this would make me lose the real customers. While I know the coin lock doesn't fully solve the problem, at least it would generate me some cash to keep the restroom neat. Have you ever had this problem in your stations? What is the best way to tackle this so the restrooms doesn't become a drain on my profit? Thanks for any hint you might share to help us out. Well, that is, as I said, it sounds funny, but it is a serious problem. And there is not one single simple solution to this, as you can imagine, because if that was the case, this listener would have figured it out already, because it sounds like he's been suffering from this for a while now. Now, this email came from Andres, and I can share his name because he's not about to buy a gas station and I'm revealing his numbers. So Andres, thank you for the question. And my apology for the delayed response to your email. I know you've sent this email a while back. I just haven't had a chance to reply back to you. But now, as for this problem, I used to have this problem quite a bit because I had 2 gas stations where the restrooms were located outside the building and the back of the building. And we would give out keys. And one problem I ran into all the time where I kept missing the keys because they would take the keys with them. So I keep making keys and then started attaching the key to a big brick or a wooden piece or a lot of different things. Our cashiers and managers all became very creative where they would make sure the key has to be returned, so they would attach it to something huge. But then it became a problem. The lock would keep breaking because the weight on the key and various other things. Yes, and I have thought about the coin lock as well, but I would highly recommend you don't do that because then it becomes, as you said, a problem, and a lot of your paying customer would get angry because they have to pay to use the restroom, which also can be illegal in some states and some areas. Because as you said, in Florida law says you have to have usable and functional restrooms. Now, if that restroom has to be paid to get used, that may be outside the law or some type of violation, I'm sure. So be careful about doing that. I would check into it before I do any of that. But one way that I started solving this problem was installing a combination lock on the bathroom door where they have to enter a 3 or a 4-digit code to enter the bathroom. This way, I eliminated the key problem where people were walking away with keys and they were coming back at 2 in the morning to use the restroom for various other illegal activities and whatnot. So I started using keys, and these keys are, not keys. These combination locks are only one-time use. Yes, it cost quite a bit of money at first, but what it does is it gives an one-time code which you can tell your customer, says, go outside and press 1562 and it will let you in. And that code would be valid just for a day, and then it would automatically reset and you will issue a different code next day. There are a lot of variations that you can set. It can be one-time use code, it can be a multiple use code, but there are ways you can do that, and I would ask you to ask a locksmith to find out if they can install one for you at a reasonable price. And this way, what you do is, when you know there is a known problem with somebody that always does something wrong with the restroom, when they show up, tell them your lock is not working because it's a combination lock and the combination system is not working right now. You can do that politely without getting into a confrontation. And secondly, as far as your toilet paper, paper towel, and soap, try to use a soap dispenser that's made out of metal so they don't get to break it or take it away with them. And also, instead of giving out paper towel, I started installing hand dryers, those commercial grade metal hand dryers. This way, I eliminated some of the paper clogging in the toilet. See, most of the time, the toilet gets clogged because people throw paper towel in it, not bathroom tissue. Bathroom tissues are designed to dissolve in water and go into the sewer system, but paper towels are different. And a lot of times people have a habit, let's say your bathroom ran out of toilet paper. People will take the paper towel and use it in the restroom, and that's when it gets clogged. So I addressed two problems at once by eliminating the paper towel and by installing hand dryers. So you can do something such as that and be a little bit more creative, and also use some gray paint once a month. Just have one of your guys or handyman or somebody to go and paint the wall and cover up the graffitis. That's what I used to do. I had a couple of cans of paint on hand, and every 3 Sundays I would send that guy and say, go cover up any graffiti you see on the wall. And also somebody told me at one point that I can paint the wall with some type of paint that we can wash, use bleach and everything else to take off the paint, the graffitis, instead of repainting the surface every time. So I believe around the end, before I left that store, we painted the wall with some type of paint that is washable, that is bleachable and everything else. Now most of our gas stations have, or all of our gas stations have restrooms that are inside, but that still doesn't eliminate all of the problems. Instead, here the problem is there is no lock, so anybody walks into the gas station can walk into the restroom, and they do use their marker and mark the walls and write different things, and they do throw paper towels into the toilet. So again, what we have done is taken away most of the paper towels and installed hand dryers instead. So see if you can try that, and at the beginning it may cost you a couple of $100, maybe $1,000 even, to install hand dryers and a coded lock. But once you do that, it will save a lot of headache for you. So try that, Andres, and see how that works. Thank you. The last question is, I have noticed in 3 of my dispensers, the regular unleaded runs very slow, but other 2 grades are fine. It has been happening on and off. What should I do? Well, I'm not an expert, but I know that there are 2 reasons a dispenser can run slow. And you gave one clue, so I can pretty definitely tell you that it is caused by the regular filter inside your dispenser. But let me address that for everybody else. When you see your dispensers are running very slow, you need to monitor and find out if it is running slow all the time or is it running slow some of the times, because it can mean 2 different things. Let's say if it is running all the time, if it's running slow all the time, then chances are that it is causing from a clogged filter. And nowadays, since we all use ethanol mixed fuel, and anytime ethanol comes into contact with any moisture, it becomes black mud. It's literally a black slush, and that clogs the filter. And that is the problem. Once the filter is clogged, dispenser will not pump too much fuel. It's going to be running very slow. So in the event you see it's running slow some of the times, fast some of the other times, then it could not be the filter. It most likely will be the leak detection system causing a malfunction that's causing your pumps to run slow. Anytime the leak detection senses a leak, it will slow down the pump. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're having a leak in your tank. It's 90% of the time, it is a sensor that's misreading the tank. So if you have a system installed in your station that is like a Vidoroot or any tank monitoring system, they have a lot of these sensors installed inside the tank that detects leak. And a lot of times there are false detection. As I said, 90% of the time, it will be a false reading. And in that false reading, it will read the tank is having a leak and they will slow down the pumps. Then next morning, you will see the pumps are running fine because the sensor is working fine again. But also another indication is, let's say your regular is running slow, but your premium is running fine. In that event, that means it's not a leak detection, because then if it was leak detection, it would make sure all of the pumps run slow. But in this event, chances are that it is your regular filter that's causing the problem. See, every dispenser has at least 2 filters inside them. And these filters look very similar to the oil filter that we use in our cars. But these are for gasoline and these are for gas stations. But they look pretty much the same, a little bit bigger in size, of course, maybe twice as the size as ones that are going into a automobile. But they're very easy to replace, and if you don't know how to do it, get somebody who knows how to do it. Watch that being done, and you can later on do it by yourself. Have some of these filters handy. Every store should have at least 4 or 5 of these filters in stock. They usually cost anywhere from $10 to $15 a piece. If you buy them online, you can buy them as low as $6, $7 a piece. But buy the right kind, the one that are made for ethanol mixed, ethanol blended fuel. That way you eliminate other issues. And this way, anytime it runs slow, you don't have to wait for a service person to show up. You can get anybody to replace it. But always remember, there is a safety switch that has to be turned off first before you take the filter out. If not, the gasoline will be everywhere on your parking lot. So make sure to learn how to do this. It's very simple. And once you know how to do it, you will save money and you can replace it anytime you see the fuel dispensers are running slow. So those are the 6 questions that I wanted to answer today. If any of you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email at shabir@gasstationbusiness101.com, or you can post any question on my Facebook group. And if you haven't joined my Facebook group, you can go and type shabirhossain.net. Yes, that is the redirect. That is the domain redirect that will take you my Facebook group. Don't forget to sign up for my very important newsletter. You can simply sign up for it by going to gasstationbusiness101.com/subscribe, Or you can simply go to my blog, gasstationbusiness101.com, and the very first page you land on, at the bottom you will see where it says subscribe to our newsletter. And if you subscribe to that newsletter, you will get to receive a free ebook, which is 9 creative ways to make some passive income. It's a book I wrote. It's not a very large book. It's only 20, 30, maybe 35 pages. But in that book, I outlined there are ways you can make passive income from home. And these are some creative ideas. I've tried most of it and I still do, and I make some money from it. And it's a hobby and it generates income. So if any of you are interested, by all means, download that book and read it. And you may want to try 1 or 2 of those ideas and make a little bit of money when you are sitting at home. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, feel free to do so from wherever you download this podcast from. If it's Stitcher or TuneIn Radio or iTunes, just hit subscribe. And this way you will never miss a show. As soon as I publish it, it should be in your inbox, letting you know that there is a new episode. And I will include a link to my podcast page on iTunes. So if any of you can go to my blog and look at show number 58, and if you pull up the show note, there will be a link that will take you to iTunes page where my podcast is. And if you are happy with what I do, you can simply give me a good review or a bad review if you think I'm not doing a good job. But I would much rather you email me and tell me how I can improve it, and I will do so. Thank you once again for joining me in this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.
This has been the one and only Gas Station Business 101 podcast with your host, Shabbir Hossain. This podcast was brought to you by CSB Academy Publishing Company. Be sure to join us next time as we share with you the secrets about how to start and operate a gas station business successfully and make money.